Hey, team players, and welcome back. Bob is in the middle of some work experience, and here he is, my man. I always thought he's hitting buttons. He's just messing with me here, hitting all the buttons and muting himself. Here's Bob, and here we go on another great episode. Today is sit or start. Obviously, always taking all your trades. We appreciate all the team players who start their comments with quick hit or deep dive, so we know the type of service to give you. We're not mind readers. We're just really good at nailing fantasy football. Over 80% accuracy when we hit you up with answers, and we're here to win. And Bob, you're on mute still somehow.
I'm
there
not
you
on
are.
mute. I'm not on
there
mute.
You go.
I was just laughing because you're like
service, baby,
weird.
Service.
Weird.
All righty,
welcome everybody to the chat.
Welcome indeed. 80% accuracy. You know it, baby. That's the worst case scenario. We're trying to do better than that. It really does have to do with the way that we do our algorithms internally. We don't just copy what clickbait is. And quite frankly, there's certain 4-letter sites that start with an E and end with an N that are a lot of useless clickbait information that don't really help you much.
But Joe, let's help out Mateo.
Most of our platforms are on them. Yo, Jesse, welcome back. All right, so we got offered Chase for Bijan Robinson.
From Joe, you're speaking in tongues right now. Let's get our head on straight. So Mateo got offered Chase for Brian Robinson and Chuba Hubbard. One of the things I'd like to know, Mateo, is if this is Chase Brown, I think that you're getting more than fair compensation for Chase Brown. Chase Brown has escalated to one of those must-start players for most people moving forward, depending on your lineup. I understand that, there's 2 running backs in the room, Khalil Herbert, potentially Leonard Fournette, but, other than stealing the touchdowns close to the board.
Oh, he'd say it's Jamar Chase.
But if it's Jamar and you get offered Jamar Chase, that's where I was going to.
If it's offered Jamar Chase, you click smash yes and don't even think any further.
And Mateo, I'm doing that. We could deep dive that in a little bit, but there's lots of good things coming.
What are you going to deep dive? The answer is hell yeah. Take Jamar Chase.
There's reasons to like Brian Robinson and reasons to like Chuba Hubbard, especially if you're struggling in the running back room. Period. If I'm giving up those,
but Jamar Chase could be a god.
He is a god. He is a god already. Mateo, and to that end, start Sam Darnold or Richardson rest of the season. One of the things you need to know, Mateo, is that Richardson is one of the worst accurate quarterbacks you can ever have on the field. And unless he cleaned his act up over the last 2 or 3 weeks, you have to go with Darnold out of those 2 guys.
Guys, I got to say, it is really hard not to laugh at this because back in May, I felt like I had to put it into Bob's head how bad Richardson sucked. And he was like, no, he'll be a good pickup. He'll rub in his legs. He'll do stuff. No, dude, he sucks. He's got, with Pittman about to go on the IR, if he hasn't already, he has no bona fide receiver out there. His entire game plan is chucking it deep. And if all of his receivers were fast, it would work. You could run verticals every time and then run underneath. They aren't. And without a doubt, you take Darnold, who is accurate, will throw for touchdowns. Sure, he's not as hot as he was back in September, but he's still going to be better than Richardson the rest of the year. Give me Hawk and Jeff every year. I am personally perplexed why this general jolt of people, mid-quarterback plus Richardson, has been asked for the last 2 weeks. Richardson sucks. I cannot emphasize that more.
Yeah, and one of the things that I need to say about Anthony Richardson, and Joe, one of the things we said back in the offseason, especially if you drafted a guy like Anthony Richardson, is that the value, it had to be at the right value. And if the right value never came up. So that meant that that player was undraftable. So if like with Chris Olave, right? Chris Olave at the back end of the 2nd round or mid-2nd round wasn't good value. If you ended up capturing Chris Olave, say 3rd round, 4th round, if you were lucky in a league, especially in best ball leagues, then there was some value there. But when we're talking about people picking up Anthony Richardson right now, what we're talking about is Anthony Richardson worth starting over a guy like Bo Nix? No. Is he worth starting over a guy like Drake May? Not really, because what you're looking at in these young quarterbacks, Drake May, Trevor Lawrence to a degree, Bo Nix, etc., Caleb Williams, is you're looking not for a big boom week, but you're looking for a solid enough floor that you're not going to get plastered in your league. Because if your quarterback doesn't score between 16 to 30 points, you've almost taken, unless you have a huge boom week from your other guys, you've taken yourself out of contention for the week.
Yeah, Richardson can give you single digits, and that's a death nail. Exactly as you're saying there, and that's the part of the reason
Darnold
here.
gave you single digits a couple weeks ago, but still.
And we had people yelling at us over the offseason when we were telling people, as Bob was there, you'll never get the value to make him worth drafting. Yeah, Jets were pretty high on consistently on that. Garrett Wilson was there. So drop Fergie to pick up Hunter Henry. I think I'm leaning that way.
Yeah, I would too. And there's a lot of good things happening in the Hunter Henry camp. Yeah, he didn't have a great game last week, but when you look at what Drake May has specifically done to make the cast that he has with him better, it's nothing like, I'm not expecting him to go off, but the matchup is good enough that he is going to most likely get 8 to 10 points. And what we need to say about tight ends, and we've said it multiple times, is that on a week-by-week basis, if you look at the stats, usually what you're going to see is in order to make it into the top 10 of tight ends, you need to score at least 10 points. On National Tight End Day, it was at least 13 points. But the cusp doesn't change, and the volatility on the top end is nice, but you never, if you're saying, oh, Tucker Kraft or Jonnu Smith, they're basically in the same category. If they score more than 5 points, you're gold. If they score more than 10 points, you're even better. And that's just with the volatility in general of tight ends. And unless you have Travis Kelce or Brock Bowers, you're going to have a what tight end do I start question. Hunter Henry is the better choice because the volume is going to be there. We can't dictate what that volume for Ferguson will be with Cooper Rush there. So that's kind of where I'm at on that whole Hunter Henry discussion. I'm also having Hunter Henry on my team. So Allen or Goff? Allen's a must start. And the reason I say that is even though they're facing Kansas City, one of the things that makes me nervous about Goff, while the matchup is incredible against Jacksonville's defense here, one of the things that worries me is that he has been one great quarterback this year, but he's also been volatile within his own statistics. So we saw a game with 85 yards. We just saw a game with 5 interceptions. We haven't really seen a game where it's like, okay, they're not going to run that much. Well, this game, it's very easily that this game could be over by the second quarter and they just smash the rock continuously, right? So Jared Goff can have a great game. His ceiling's like 3 touchdowns, but so is Allen's, and he has the rushing upside potentially as well. Not as many rushing touchdowns as last year, but I'm on Allen, Steve.
So here's the problem.
Allen's probably going to get over 20 fantasy points this week.
So here's the problem with this one is we're projecting the Lions as a team to score a touchdown more than the Bills. It's just the way that it is. But Bob's exactly right, is that it also just could be running the ball into submission because Jacksonville is defenseless. So that's a possibility. But that being said, if Allen doesn't run in a touchdown, I'm not sure he outscores Goff. And that's why this one's so hard, because this is, in a very real way, Buffalo's treating this as the AFC Championship game, because if they get the game at home versus at Arrowhead, it makes such a world of difference to them. It is, I don't think Allen has ever beat Mahomes. So there's that riding on this. And there's a lot of all of the extra elements that go between that. Also, the Bills are yet to beat a team that's over 500. I know that's remarkable for a team that only has 2 losses, but they're yet to beat a team over 500. So this is a major prove it out for Buffalo game. But
Yeah.
I can't ignore how bad Jacksonville is just not good. And because you add that all up, I'd still sit with Goff. I just think there's so many more total points to be had on that field. And, they might be benched for the last couple drives, but he's still got the meat biter as a coach. So that's how I look at it.
But that's where I'm at, Joe, with Josh Allen, is that Josh Allen has, like, the week that Jared Goff, one of the weeks that Jared Goff was incredible was the week that he actually caught a touchdown pass as well. So when I'm looking at this for both of these quarterbacks have a potential ceiling of 3 touchdowns passing and an extra touchdown somewhere in the markets down the line. Maybe they rush one in, maybe they have something else happening. But their floor, for me, at the very least, is similar-ish. If they don't throw for 3 touchdowns, are they going to get for 300 yards? Because there's a bonus in some leagues for the 300 yards. Are they going to get the additional rushing touchdown? While Goff is more likely to throw the ball for 300 yards, he also could very easily throw the ball for 100 yards. It's just you're playing a dicey game, running out Jared Goff over Josh Allen. While Joe has shown you metrics, Steve, that it makes sense to put out Goff, there's also a chance that in a matchup where they don't have to use them, they might not use them.
Yeah, so basically, here's your risk. Is it too easy for Goff to score or not? That's fundamentally the question we're having here. If you really break that one down. Alrighty, next up on the docket here, Austin traded Scary Terry for the Kansas City, McLaurin and Hunt for Pacheco, James Cook and Wilson. Now we play each other this week, so I don't have Cook or Wilson. All right. That's that's a big trade.
It's a huge trade, a really big trade. I think when you're looking at what you could potentially lose or get in a trade like this, you're basically playing the game of, is Hunt going to revert back to a secondary role, or is Pacheco going to take over his first week back? And to spice that up, you added in there James Cook and Wilson. This is absolutely a fair trade. And one of the reasons why I would do this trade, and one of the reasons why I'm glad you did this trade, is that you added in that a piece like James Cook. So while Hunt is super hot right now, and I wouldn't want to bench him for almost anybody, you added in James Cook and Garrett Wilson. And McLaurin's been on a hot streak for the most part. Couple things going on here and there. But the 2 players that you gave up, you moved yourself into solid options. I'm not really worried about next week. There's always, always things can happen from a week-to-week basis. But this is a solid trade, especially because you went out there and got James Cook. And while James Cook hasn't been, like, super incredible all season, he's still a top-notch option in the running back room. And then you're potentially getting that back-end Pacheco. But this trade could very well just be McLaurin and Hunt for Cook and Wilson, and it's still a fair trade. I would rather have McLaurin and Hunt right now.
I think that's the side he got, if I'm reading this right. So he's playing him next week, so he won't have Cook or Wilson. So he traded him.
Lineup is Mooney, Higgins, Collins, McCaffrey, Jacobs, Hawkinson, Njoku, Douglas, and Javonte Williams. So this goes back to the Chase.
Yeah, put Chase on that lineup and set. Next thing you gotta do is move Higgins, and you're done.
Yeah, you didn't really.
Dude, you have a championship worthy team there.
Yeah, you didn't need Chuba, and you didn't need Brian Robinson with a lineup like that. I think you've set yourself up really good. I would monitor that Jacobs quadriceps injury that he just ended up with the other day. See how that goes. but this is a super
Do
solid
Higgins
team.
do Higgins and Mooney and Javonte Williams in a 2-for-1 where you get a back and you're set.
Yeah, we got you, John. Everybody in the chat, we see all your quick hits. We see all the questions in the chat. We answer every question here at Local Football Flavor. So make sure to stick with us.
And we also appreciate all the quick hitters answering us. If it's a quick hitter or a deep dive, we appreciate all you team players doing that and letting us know.
Austin, I don't think you lost, and here's why. Realistically speaking, there are some trades when you're out there that you can say, I've lost. But there are most trades that you can't really say you lost until you look up that points per replacement player when you're actually playing the game itself. So if you look through the rest of the season and you start Kyle Pitts over Kraft or whatnot, that's fine. Trading Swift has a really hard schedule coming up for running backs. He plays Minnesota 2 times. Minnesota really plays running backs well, okay? Rashad White is in a situation, and while I don't really like going out and getting Rashad White, I can understand him being a player that you like, and I can understand that his role on this team, while it does fluctuate, he is still producing points, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, but he got Pitts.
With Kyle Pitts as well, that's even the bonus that takes me over the top. You can have Kraft. Both of those tight ends are both really good options in the tight end market. Both of those tight ends
Austin, at the end of the day,
over 10 points. I think you did well.
Yeah, the game is also about being enjoyable. If you hate Swift, get rid of him. It's what I've been trying to tell people who got the Harrison and that don't want to deal with it. You got a player you love and you actually want to root for, enjoy it. That's part of the game as well. I mean, that's why you see people betting for their home team, even if it's not smart. Looking at you, Jets fans.
Tyler's question here. Is it okay to start 3 people from the same game? If you're starting 3 people from the game tonight, yeah.
I don't know about that. I think tonight's going to be a barn burner.
You're saying that you wouldn't start Hurts, A.J. Brown, and the Washington kicker tonight?
No, I'm totally doing that. I'm saying starting 3 people is not a problem. I want to do it.
That's what I'm
saying.
Tonight's
a great game.
It's a good idea. I'm saying it's a good idea.
Oh, I heard wouldn't.
Yeah, I would. And I don't see a problem with it. I only see a problem with starting three players from the same team if the implied totals are low. So, for example, if you're going out there and you're starting 3 people from Tennessee, their implied total is really low. So it's probably not a good idea if you're hoping for a touchdown. Maybe they'll get the yards, but if you're hoping for the touchdown, no. Washington kicker Zane Gonzalez, I think, is the kicker tonight. It's reasonable to start him for sure. Ferguson, Knox, if Kincaid is out, or Freiermuth. I like Knox if Kincaid is out this week. There's reasons to like Freiermuth. Freiermuth did score a touchdown last week, but his volume is also not super high. So
no, it's not.
I'm not really a fan of that, and I know that Dawson Knox still has the same potential as Pat Freiermuth, and they're only realistically within a couple points of one another. Again, we're talking about 7 points to 10 points, right?
Yeah.
So
again, back to the giant point I've been having all season. Unless you went out and bought one of the tight ends that started with a K, when we were on Kittle the entire offseason, the rest of them are all blahs. I mean, every once in a while, McBride or Bowers is like, all right, but I understand the desire to maximize the tight end potential, but I would not go around and move the roster. Like, just use Freiermuth as an example. The Steelers had absolutely no second receiver for the majority of the season, and he was never able to step up and become the guy. That rest of his career is a stain that should never be forgotten about him. Sure, there will be hype next year because there's always build-up hype. Steelers are one of these teams that get it thrown upon them. Arizona isn't. Just remember that as you move forward. He had a chance, he didn't, and now that there's actually a Mike Williams in the house, I think it's going to be a problem for Freiermuth moving forward. Rate my 2 QB league: May, Carr, Hill, Devontae Adams, Higgins, the other Hill, Kamara, have Laporta on the bench. So Taysom Hill being the other Hill.
Okay.
Um, I
Well,
don't like having Adams or Higgins. I think they're both disasters moving into the playoffs. I think Higgins in real life is going to quit, and you're going to have a lot of did not participate written all over that guy. And the Jets are a mental implosion train wreck in process before our eyes. So I don't want to be anything tied to Aaron Rodgers.
Mhm.
So if I'm rating your team, I want to get rid of those two entering into the playoff push first and foremost. Dude, having two Saints, especially Taysom, is going to be challenging because
I'm on, John. I'm giving your team a 5. And I have
out
a
of
lot of questions with your team, and feel free to add it to the chat where your direction, what your record is right now as we go through the chat. We're going to answer every question. So if you're with us and we haven't answered your question yet, feel free. Feel free to stick around. We're going to answer every question. But the reason I'm very much concerned about your team is it looks like you might not have written out all the
he just
running
wrote his
backs
starters.
here.
Yeah.
But the quarterback combination is volatile. Don't get me wrong, it's super volatile, but it could pay off. I don't think that either of those quarterbacks are going to be capable the rest of the season of producing 20-plus point games. So that's what makes me nervous, particularly in a 2-quarterback league, but I understand the issues there. The other issue that Joe brought up is Higgins. Higgins has a good chance of really tearing you apart down the stretch, whether you trade him or whether you keep him. So I would, and with Hill and Adams, there's an extreme amount of volatility there. Adams with the volume is nice, but again, it's a bit of volatility. So we can talk more about
This team was picked 3rd overall. And that's how it came to pass. Dude, I'm sorry, John. This is the first time I think I've ever seen your smiley face here giving us a comment. But the reality is this team's going nowhere. This team's a 5 out of 10 is generous. Taysom
I
Hill
still think it has potential.
Basically neutered. Tyreek never showed up. Devontae Adams is on the Hindenburg, and Kamara is your only viable player left, and I'm worried about him literally being too old to finish the playoffs. So really, your only best option is Laporta.
John.
So I feel bad for you, John. I really do. I'm not trying to bust your bubble, blow your parade, but we need to do like 3 to 7 trades to get you championship winning.
Yeah. I think you're at least 2 away, John. I think you are at least 2 trades away from having a team that you're going to be comfortable with going across the next couple of games. But we can talk about it a little bit later if you'd like, John. Tyler, Hunter Henry is a better option if he's hurt. If he's questionable, then he's not that great, right? Because he might not play. If Hunter Henry's available and Dawson Knox is available, I would queue up those 2 Saturday night and look at where that stands Sunday morning, and see what's coming out, because the injury report today, the injury report tomorrow are going to be definitely beneficial in letting you know if Kincaid or if Hunter Henry are going to play. Jason, I traded Pollard and T.J. Hawkinson, who I never started because you have Kittle, for CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, I'm okay with this. Jason, we have talked at length about why CeeDee Lamb could be moved, and Joe has talked at length why CeeDee Lamb is worth keeping around.
I like getting him.
He has what Malik Neighbors does have as well. A bad quarterback, although Daniel Jones is still a little bit more talented than what Cooper Rush is.
Is he?
But the volume is going to be there. But it might not be good volume. So you might get 6 catches for 50 yards, which is still 11 points. And when you're not relying on him to be your number 1 wide receiver, that's good enough. Okay?
Yeah, and the other thing that CD has that Neighbors doesn't have is CD has the ability himself to break stuff. Neighbors just isn't there yet. Maybe not getting there. But no, I also think this is a good representation of what fair value for CD is. I think that's a fair trade all the way around. I do think you won it, though.
Yeah, and Nick, as it goes to either Ferguson or Henry rest of the season, I just want to kind of give you the stats. In PPR leagues, Hunter Henry should have about 88 points, which sets him at the ninth best tight end. Ferguson's sitting there at 75 points, but his arrow is trending down while Hunter Henry's arrow is trending up. Drake May loves him. And when a young quarterback loves a player, it's reasonable to think that will not decrease. Again, they have the same number of targets, almost the same number of catches, but over 70, 80 yards more Hunter Henry has.
And there also is something to not being on a sinking ship in terms of the personnel around you.
Yeah.
New England's not firing their coach. Dallas is. So there is something about buy-in moving down the stretch.
This guy in my league agreed on Devonta Smith for Jennings and Mason. Is this a good trade? I would want Jennings. And with Ayuk out, there's a very good realistic chance that Jennings could end up top 20 in terms of wide receiver production. This is nothing against Devonta Smith, okay? But the passing volume for the Eagles is lower than it has been in previous years. Devonta Smith is sitting there at 50 catches or 50 targets right now, okay? And in the limited number of playing time that Jawan Jennings has had, he's already at 47.
Yep.
So there's something indicative of that being a reasonable trade, although on paper it feels like it's not. But in terms of future production, it feels like Jawan Jennings.
I like the Jennings side of that trade. Even if Mason ends up being nothing, I like the Jennings side of that trade.
Marlon, what do you think of this trade?
Wait, time out. It's only 4 o'clock. Marlon, you got here early, my man. Thank you.
Love to see you, Marlon. What do you think of this trade? Monty, DK, JSN, and Addison for HN and Marvin Harrison. We were talking about this yesterday. You have A.J. Brown and Neighbors as wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and Breece Hall and Mixon. Does HN would be my flex and Marv would be my backup? I like this move. Okay? Yeah. And I think I like it from a couple different perspectives. One, HN has a better spike potential week, whereas Montgomery is going to come. His spikes are going to come if he gets 2 or 3 touchdowns, right?
Yeah.
But the likelihood that he gets 3, probably not high. The likelihood HN gets 3 is not high either, but HN gets you that reception number as well. And that could be a valuable asset. I think the trade is fair enough because when you look at it on paper, JSN and Addison are 2 pieces that if they're on your bench, they're always going to be a should I start them? Should I not?
Sunday nightmare.
Should I start them? Should I not? And at this point in time, if you're not starting JSN, there's probably a reason why. His matchups are good and they pass a lot. You traded 2 guys who get passed to a lot, but when one of them comes back, that volume is going to tend to normalize a little bit. While I still love DK as the wide receiver I'd rather have out of all the wide receivers in that deal, I do think that Achane is worth the chance, especially when you're sitting there with Breece Hall and Mixon as your starting running backs. I think that he's the home run threat that's worth the chance because Montgomery doesn't give you that.
Yeah, Marlon, I think that I broke this down yesterday where I tried to rephrase the trade a little bit of taking DK out of it and trying doing JSN and Hall. And I still stand by that. Bob is talking about the potential upside on an explosion, which don't get me wrong, the A-chain explosion factor is real. I just like having solid floors because, again, there's a lot of teams right now that are in free fall. Everything is dying around them, and Miami is no exception. So I don't want to risk the team that's possibly the second, if not strongest mentally weak team in the league behind the Jets or with the Jets, depending on how you look at it. And that's what makes me really hesitate against A-Chain. That being said, if you can rework this trade where it's Breece and Addison for A-Chain outright, I would do that. Marvin Harrison is not an upgrade over AJ Brown or Neighbors, but DK is. So if I can do the trade where I still have DK on my team and I get rid of Breece Hall for A-Chain, I believe that is a lateral move, but I don't think putting Harrison over DK improves your starting lineup. So that's, again, the rework that I recommend to you.
Yeah.
And that's how I would go about it. Move Hall instead of Monty.
And Marlon, that's a fair assessment. I mean, you look at it, and the thing is too, Joe, DK's not fully healthy yet. So when he comes back,
I know that.
He's probably going to perform well. But it's reasonable also, Marlon, when we look at it, Monty, if you wanted to move Monty, you could totally do that. Monty has had some good games, and his touchdowns have been almost guaranteed as we go through it. So I think your team actually would be stronger if you were, and I understand what we've said about Breece Hall week after week after week. If you were to go in your positions as Achane, Mixon, Monty in your flex, I think those three players actually give you a better chance of winning on a week-to-week basis than DK or Marvin Harrison would. So I'm absolutely okay if you were to move on from Breece and do Breece, JSN, and Addison for Achane and Harrison if you wanted to do that. As the trade sits, I do think it's fair, but I do think there are other ways you can work it to think about it. And I know you have another one up here that says, should I do Neighbors, DK, JSN, and Monty for Derrick Henry, Pickens, and Tillman?
Ooh. And King Henry, now we're talking.
While we are, we always love moving into Derrick Henry here. One of the things that I think that you need to be cautious of is giving up.
So Pickens goes into, so if I'm reading this correctly, Pickens goes into your starting lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Your running backs are King Henry and Monty. And Tillman is your flex? Is that how this would all shake out when it's all said and done?
Let us know, Marlon. Let us know.
Yeah, if that's the case, those all three would be starters, and you're only taking your only starter you were taking out was the receiver, the Giant. Do it, yeah. I would do that to get King Henry on my team.
Yeah, like if I could roll Breece. If I could roll Breece, Derrick Henry, and Mixon into the fantasy playoffs, I think I'd be good with that.
Yeah.
I really do think I'd be good with that. No matter what I'd be giving up. Because Pickens does have that upwards potential like Tillman does as well. Is sending Reed and Ingram for Neighbors crazy? I have Goddard as my backup. It's not crazy, okay? One of the things that I've communicated about Jaden Reed for quite some time now is that he has really good potential. Now, when you want to actualize potential, there are, it becomes problematic with certain game or team scripts, right? So he gets most of his volume out of the slot. And while he has the potential to be a top 12 wide receiver any given year, currently in a standard format, he's sitting at 9th best. And when we go to PPR, he skates down all the way to, where is it at? He skates down the 13th. Okay. So you look at it on a game-by-game basis, he has the potential every week to get you 12, 13 plus points. Neighbors is in the same situation. So the piece that you're adding in is Ingram. And the only reason why I say it's not crazy is that, do you feel like Ingram will be handicapped in any way by Mac Jones or CJ Beathard? If you do, then it's reasonable to think to move on from Ingram. But I'm not that comfortable with Goddard. And this is speaking as a Goddard owner as well. So if it were
can't be comfortable with the Goddard.
If it were me and I'm looking at these playoff schedule and Neighbors has a nice schedule, I would look at it and ask myself, what exactly? So, like as an example here, everybody, and this is important to note. Neighbors is sitting there with 94 targets, number 10 overall wide receiver in PPR. Jaden Reed is sitting with 47 targets, 13th overall. So what that tells me about Jaden Reed is Jaden Reed's points have come in bunches, and they have, because I've owned Jaden Reed. They've come in bunches, and they do tend to clump up in certain respects in the game. So I look at it and I say, okay, well, do I want more volume on a game-by-game basis, or am I okay hitting a spike week from Jaden Reed? Many ways to view. I'm okay moving into Neighbors. I really am, because I don't believe in Mac Jones and I don't believe in CJ Beathard. I do believe in Jaden Reed, but that's kind of where I fall on it. Joe, what do you think?
So I don't think it's crazy, but I also don't think it's a good idea. Reed and Neighbors are too similar. That there's not a big enough of a gap. Goddard is not a valid replacement. So I don't want to have to rely on Goddard. And that's effectively what your trade is doing. Going from a lateral move and putting yourself in an exposed position for really minimal upside, if any. So I wouldn't do this trade. I don't think it's crazy, but I also would never do it. Maybe if you go out and you get a different backup as a starting point, it can be a different discussion. But I actually think that Ingram is going to have the upside from the horrible quarterback play, because he already is a massive target share in the playbook. And whenever you're a bad quarterback, who, by the way, only threw the tight ends his entire tenure in New England, I think it's going to help him. I don't know if it's going to help his touchdowns, but I think it's going to help his PPR status.
So, Joe, just to follow up before we get to that question, a follow up for Marlon here. I want you to look at these two potential teams, okay? So the team, if you did the HN trade, would look like Kyler, Mixon, Brees, Neighbors, A.J. Brown, Bowers, HN Tucker, Lions defense with Marv on the bench.
Okay.
Or, and anybody in the chat can comment on Marlon's team here as well, or Kyler, Mixon, Brees, A.J. Brown, Pickens, Brock Bowers, Derrick Henry, Tucker, Lions with Tillman on the bench.
I think number 2 by a lot. That the one that's on the screen right now with King Henry, I like a lot more.
And that's Brees, Mixon, and Henry.
Yeah, that's pretty stacked.
And
what Marlon did is he cashed in all of his quality bench for King Henry, and you can't fight that. I like that roster a lot.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, Marlon, I am okay with either of these. But what Joe's communicating more so is that Derrick Henry selection, and you can even go in and look at like points per game basis, and there's a chance that he might not keep running at that clip, but there's no reason for them to stop.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to stop. And with HN definitely does have those explosive games. Every single game, like last week's game was his worst game. Okay. So how I would frame this is I would look at the perspective and I would say, okay, do I like Pickens in my wide receiver spot, or do I like Neighbors moving forward in my wide receiver spot? That's kind of the discussion that you have to get there. Pickens,
King Henry dwarfs that gap.
Yeah. Pickens for me actually I think is a great play, but I know a lot of people in the community and a lot of people here in this community specifically, many of us do like Neighbors' schedule and don't like Pickens' schedule. Okay.
Fair.
And what I want to say to that is if they bench Daniel Jones and Drew Lock comes in, do you think that Drew Lock will continue to put the volume to Neighbors? And the same thing goes. If Russ gets hurt.
I kind of think he has to. It's almost like Darnold has to force the ball to JJ.
To Pickens.
Yeah. I don't think Pickens is going away.
Yeah, I think that Neighbors is a great wide receiver. I don't want to miscommunicate that at all. But just climbing up the board.
You like him more than I do. That's the other part of this.
Well, Joe, and just as climbing up the board here, and this is some simple stats here from Fantasy Pros. You look at Neighbors, 94 targets, 61 receptions, sitting there at wide receiver 10 in PPR. But who's back there at wide receiver 18 with 65 receptions? George Pickens, or 65 targets, 40 receptions. It's George
Yeah,
Pickens.
and Pickens also was hampered by really bad quarterbacking by Fields, regardless of what his record said. He was not a good quarterback. All right, so let's talk about two good quarterbacks here with Jay. Stroud or Herbert. This week, I am going to be on Herbie. Cincinnati's defense can't stop a thing, and they have to play shootouts. So I am at a spot where in the shootout, in what's probably a back and forth game, give me Herbert. That being said, I don't think Stroud looks bad 3 weeks in a row. But he has shown 2 of his last 4 halves pretty bad.
Yeah.
Herbert, I want Herbert. I want Herbert this week, and that's I'm biased. I'm not fighting that. I want Herbert.
So I'm on Herbert as well, Jay. Stroud can have a really good game, but I do feel that the game script will dictate a lot of Joe Mixon against this defense. It's not a very good rush defense. Pardon me, not a very good pass defense. But I do think that Herbie, with his running backs back and playing, in the environment that he's going to play in, I think that Herbie has a decent enough game. There's a good chance that Herbie can go for 225, 3 touchdowns, a couple to QJ. Stroud can easily do the same. I feel that these players are very close, but my lean here on Thursday would be Herbie. Best defense for the playoffs. I already have the Broncos. So let's take a look at the schedule in week 15, week 16, and week 17 in the NFL. I do like the Broncos. There's no reason to really not like the Broncos. When we look at week 15, let me look at this up real quick. Everybody stick tight. I just want to look up week 15 this year. Week 15 NFL. Looking at these games, if I'm seeing anything, you got the Bengals against the Titans. Okay, that could be a nice matchup week 15. Jets at Jags could be a nice matchup, but the Jets defense has been kind of flowering. Love Broncos at Colts. Sitting there. Cardinals at Patriots could be an interesting one as well. Vikings at Bears is definitely a matchup I want to capitalize on. Falcons at Raiders could be another great matchup to capitalize on. Probably don't want the Lions that week. Cowboys could be okay against the Panthers. Falcons again draw week 16, draw the Giants, so that could be a nice one. Bengals draw the Browns, which could be also a nice one. Cardinals draw the Panthers. And then the next week after that in the championship would be the Rams against the Cardinals. Yeah, I mean, I could see myself targeting the Cardinals, maybe the Vikings, although week 18 is a rough matchup for them. And then probably Chargers maybe as well. Definitely a couple defenses to look at. Yes, I am at my work. I work in the basement of a church, so I've got some cool windows to look out. They're really nice when the sun actually goes through them. I really do like them when it's sunshine, but there's a busy street out there, so it's not as nice. This week, Grant, D-Hop, Garrett Wilson, Tony Pollard, Devontae Adams. Need 3. All right, we got you. So looking at these wide receivers, I think that one of my initial leans would definitely be D-Hop. D-Hop has, while it's not the best opposition that you can face, and the Bills do tend to keep things in front of them, DeAndre is a great play this week. I also like Devontae Adams this week if he's healthy. He has to be healthy. The volume is something that you can't really pass up on. And then you've got Garrett Wilson sitting around there. I really don't want to invest and play 2 Jets wide receivers in the off chance that Rodgers does not perform. I don't think he's going to pass for 300 some yards against the Colts. I'd be willing to trust one of those wide receivers. Devontae has the volume, but he was also dealing with a little bit of a sickness. So if he's healthy, I would roll into Devontae with the volume and D-Hop. And then it comes down to Garrett Wilson or Tony Pollard. I don't really want to start two of those wide receivers. So I would probably try to move one of them if I could. And I don't like Tony Pollard. And that's the other thing. Tony Pollard's matchup is terrible this week, guys. Minnesota has been destroying run games infinitely. But again, I don't really like starting two Jets. So if I were to say anything right now, Grant, take it with a grain of salt. I'd be on Garrett Wilson, Devontae, and D-Hop, but I don't like starting two Jets. But Tony Pollard's matchup is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. Jay, trade Tyreek and Brees for Mixon and St. Brown. Yeah, in a heartbeat, Jay. Reason why I say that, Mixon's volume is incredible. I mean, you can look at the metrics and in terms of rushing volume, and just going to put. Oh man, Butker is questionable. What even is this nonsense? Mixon has not even played a full season, but he's top 10 in attempts. I'm banking on a guy that's top 10 in attempts. By all means, Brees Hall's 15th in attempts, but that's still 20 behind Mixon. St. Brown gives you a way better floor than Tyreek Hill. I'm doing that trade in a heartbeat, Jay. Those are two great players to move into. Juan, I just got offered Brian Robinson Jr., Marvin Harrison, and Addison for Ken Walker. Still have Brees, Kyron, Madison, Etienne, Ramondre. Should I pull the trigger? I'd say this one's up to you. The reason I say this one's up to you is Addison's not a piece that I really want. So Addison is really like a mid flex option to back end bench option for me on a week-to-week basis. I do trust Brian Robinson Jr. going forward if he's healthy. You're moving into a lot of volatility and moving out of a decent amount of volatility. Again, Ken Walker he has 99 carries on the year. That ranks him as the 28th ranked running back. Brian Robinson, with all the games that he has missed, ranks at 27th in terms of carries. So when you go in and you say, okay, well, he's missed since week 9, didn't play week 6. So he missed week 9, week 10, coming back week 11. So he should have more carries. His volume each week is above 15 carries. Ken Walker is it's like basically looking at a mirror, right? I mean, they're not eclipsing a lot of carries. Ken Walker gives you that bump in receptions. Brian Robinson, he has a little bit of a reception bump, but it's not very high. So for me, this would be one, do you want Marvin Harrison Jr.? If you want Marvin Harrison Jr. and this is the cost to move to Marvin Harrison Jr., do it. If Marvin Harrison becomes an every week starter for you, do it. If he's not, and he's just going to be, and you're planning on starting Brian Robinson Jr., I would rather start Ken Walker over Brian Robinson Jr. But it's close. It's really close. So if you like Marvin Harrison Jr., I think you should do it. Lucas, welcome. Would you rather start Love or Wilson at quarterback this week? There is a narrative, and this is simply from a just looking at the way that the NFC North plays, is they're very feisty matchups. While I do think Russell Wilson has the better potential to go over like 15 plus points in a week, I do think that Jordan Love, in a narrative where they're going to be playing knockout football, would probably be a good option as well. Both of these options are solid. I would tend to probably lean a little bit more on, because they're both kind of revenge games here, I would tend to lead more, not really revenge games, but, divisional matchups here. I would tend to lean more a little bit on the Russell Wilson side of this. But I could easily start Love too. I don't think they're going to be very far apart by the end of this week in terms of points. But I do tend to lean a little bit more on Russell Wilson when we sit here today. Knoxton Henry, Same question. I like Henry. I like Henry if he's healthy. If Henry is not healthy and Knox is playing over Kincaid, then Knox is a really great play. Josh Allen still throws the ball to Knox, likes Knox a lot. But I'm on Hunter Henry. I think that Hunter Henry's targets are amazing for a tight end. If he's not going to go, this is a decision you can make Saturday night. Is Hunter Henry a more consistent option than Taysom Hill? Yeah. You go in and look at the numbers, Nick. You're staring at a player when you go in and look at the numbers that has been a reliable target for Drake May moving forward. And you look at the targets that these players have had. Hunter Henry is 6th in targets to tight ends. Kincaid is 5th. Jake Ferguson is tied with Hunter Henry, but his are going to go down. There's no way they can go up. So while it is a kind of lowish volume passing offense with not a lot of touchdown upside, Hunter Henry does get a lot of targets, and I like that. If I can go out and I can get a tight end on the waiver wire today that is 6th in targets on the year, I'm doing that all day, every day. Mateo, Austin Siebert's probably not playing tonight, and I know in the chat some people were talking about this. It's going to be Zane Gonzalez tonight from what I heard. Lucas, we'll get to all the quick hits here. We got everybody. Lucas, 12th man PPR, what would you rate my team out of 10? Love, Wilson, Brees, King Henry, Amon, Nico, Neighbors, McBride, and Njoku. This team, I don't want to rate any team as a perfect 10, but this team is very damn near close to a perfect 10 of a team. I would call it like a 9.25. The only question mark here is how much you trust Brees going forward. The wide receiver room is knockout. That tight end room is knockout as well. And Lucas just asked, would we start Love or Wilson this week? And I talked about the narrative of both games, both being divisional matchups. Both teams are going to play really hard in both these games. My initial lean this week is towards Wilson. Your initial lean is towards Love. We knew that going into it. I think they're going to be closer in terms of point spread than people think. This team is really solid, super solid, Lucas.
Yeah, Lucas, that's a championship great team.
You're in a really good space. Paolo, I flipped Tank Dell and Wandale for Marvin Harrison Jr. Good move. It's not a bad move, but it is a frustrating move. Wandale Robinson's volume is super high for a wide receiver of his caliber, but the volume isn't good volume, right? It's really just garbage volume. You look at it, Wandale Robinson ranks 5th in volume of all wide receivers in the NFL at 84 catches. Neighbors is at 94. But you look at his yards, it's 394 yards, which is awful.
You cried as you said that. Like your soul literally cried as you read that number.
You look at where he ranks in terms of yardage, and it's 44th out of all wide receivers.
Yeah, so basically, Wandale Robinson went from being a darling in the beginning of the year to a nothingness as he just hasn't produced. But I gotta say, Pablo, for the moving forward, I like Tank Dell most out of anyone in this trade. That's my starting point here. So no, I would not have done this trade. I understand how people name recognition once it's done. Yeah. I think Tank Dell is, I'm not gonna say he's a sleeping giant or anything like that, but I think he's going to end up right there in the same category as a Devontae Smith, probably a tier higher,
but
or
I will
at least
say,
a couple notches higher.
That the trade is fair because
it's fair. No, I'm not saying it's not fair. I'm just saying I would not have done it.
Both Tank and Wandale are just like MHJ is a constant start-sit kind of question. And MHJ, if you're moving these two guys to get into MHJ is in your lineup regardless through the good or the bad. So you have to understand that there is not as much volume as you think right now towards Marvin Harrison Jr. There's a good amount, but on a week-to-week basis, is it enough to sustain him as a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 3? Right now, in terms of volume, he's sitting back there as like the 23rd ranked wide receiver with Tyreek, Deontay, and Amari Cooper. Just traded Tillman for Amari Cooper and Wandale. Brad,
no.
It's not a bad move, But
Yes,
here's
it
what I'll
is.
say. Here's what I'll say, Joe. I want you to be quiet. Okay? I want you to be quiet. I would
I'm
rather
trying.
have Tillman. I would rather have Tillman, Brad. I'm worried about the switch in quarterback if they go from Winston to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But I do understand, and Joe will explain another day about the narrative of Amari Cooper in cold weather. He's in the worst position to be at for that.
Mm-hmm.
But what we need to go through is that if he does come back healthy, he is on a better team. And
well, yeah,
I am okay if this is a back, like, because you picked up Tillman off the waivers. I'm okay with a back end play like this potentially paying out dividends, but I would have kept Tillman. Tillman. Quincy, what to do with Mooney? Is he a drop? I heard he's on the injury report. Achilles. I didn't hear that. Been at work all day.
let's check
Let
that.
me look it up.
Let's make that official. Before we start going down the injury road.
I don't like hearing that.
No,
That's the case. Kyle Pitts to the moon, if that's the case.
That's a bad starting point. The official yet.
Yeah, I have not heard that. It has.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Not to say he won't be, but he's not on it yet. In terms of the actual NFL official injury report.
Let's see. Latest updates on Darnell Mooney. He is dealing with an Achilles injury.
Yeah, but he's been a full participant.
Mooney was limited at Thursday's practice due to an Achilles injury.
Okay, well, that's Thursday's not updated yet.
I'd say wait, Quincy. Wait and see, because he can't be dropped. But if he does have the Achilles injury and he's out, then he would be a drop candidate.
Well, if he's out, if he goes on the IR, obviously he's out. Yeah.
Yeah. Nino, I ended up doing that trade between in my other league. I sent Chase Brown and Ingram for Connor and Ott for playoff schedule loan, plus picked up Benson. Yeah, I don't think that this is a bad move. I do tend to lean a little bit heavier on the Chase Brown side because I do trust Joe Burrow to be able to move the ball a little bit better than Kyler Murray. But the fact that you got both Connor and Benson, high volume rushing, plus a really good tight end without quarterback question, it's great. I think that's a solid.
I think that move is he won that move.
Yeah, in that respect, I do like that a lot.
I like
Lamar for Chuba, Debo, and Hawk Tua. My other quarterback is Russell Wilson. My running backs are Brees, Najee, Pacheco, London, MHJ, Sutton, Diop. Paolo, I remember talking about this yesterday, and I don't like moving out of Lamar. I don't like doing it. Lamar is consistently one of the highest scoring fantasy quarterbacks in the league when healthy.
Yeah, but Wilson, when healthy, has also been top 5.
Yeah. What I do like about this trade is that you move yourself into Chuba, which will help you out in the short term, especially how you feel about Najee. And the Debo play gives you a good upside potential sitting there with those wide receivers. Now,
and I would do this one, Paulo. And I'm assuming you're just cutting crap on your back end. But I would do this.
I'd think about it because I do like Chuba, but I don't know. I think Lamar.
I don't think I get it. You love Lamar. I get it. But I would do that.
Yeah.
I mean, putting Debo on that roster is a significant upgrade. And same with Hawk. Hawk is one of the legitimate tight ends moving forward. I don't even need Tua in return. If he starts waffling, take Tua out of it. I'm cool riding Wilson by himself in a 1 quarterback league.
Here's the thing. Lamar has a week 14 bye. So if you need the wins now and you're worried about the Steelers, the Chargers, and Philly coming up on the schedule, then it's reasonable to think to move into Chuba and Debo would be a good play if you are considering the bye. If you already are solidly in the playoffs, I wouldn't trade Lamar coming out of that bye week, starting the playoffs fresh. Week 15, Giants, then the Steelers in Houston. While the Steelers games are always tough, that Giants game, they've been tough against passing teams, but Lamar's a great running back as well. So take that into consideration, that Lamar isn't just projectable as a quarterback, that you're also projecting his rushing numbers as well.
Yeah.
And he's not like Hurts where he just jumps into the end zone. He actually runs.
This has to be a super flex league, or else Lamar wouldn't be that valuable. But even then, I would do it.
Quick hit. I don't know what to do with Lamb. I'm 6-5, 6th place. Is there anyone I can target with Lamb and Andrew's package, or just hold Lamb? Joe will tell you to hold him. There's a lot of reasons that it's better to hold on to Lamb than to trade him. However, what I will say is that if I can move Lamb right now into and I'm 6-5, if I can move Lamb into a Terry McLaurin, Cortland Sutton package, I'd think about it. If I could move Lamb into, let's say, George Pickens and a solid running back option, I'd consider it, right? Because the volume will be there, but like we said, similarly to Wan'Dale Robinson, we can't project what that volume will do.
It'll be better than Wan'Dale Robinson.
It doesn't feel like they're going to move the ball down, but the best player on this team is CeeDee Lamb. And if he catches the ball and he has room to run, he's going to run and he's going to make his own plays. So there's a lot of things to think about there. But if you do want to move him, you could probably move him into a Terry McLaurin type wide receiver or a Cortland Sutton type wide receiver plus some other pieces, right? I would personally rather still take on CD in that situation unless the pieces are really, really good. What do we think about?
I love the fact that Marlon got here at 4 instead of 5. You know, it used to be like Marlon would always check in right before we were about to log out. I love that we're going to talk to you more, Marlon. It's great.
Here's the thing. I'm on both sides. I think your team will be good regardless of what trade you take. It just depends on how you want those points to come. Derek, if you are at all concerned and will not enjoy owning Derrick Henry, then by all means go after Achane. Achane definitely has the super spike week potential. Where Derrick Henry is valuable is in the same touchdown market as David Montgomery. Okay. So
no. Henry's a lot more consistent than Monty.
I'm saying touchdown market, not running market. Okay. So you're looking at Monty with 8 touchdowns, Cook with 8 touchdowns, Kyron with 8, and Derrick Henry at 12. All those players, if you're going for just touchdown markets, are in a tier that I would say are above some other players. Okay. Then you've got your Gibbses and your Mixons and your Bijans, right, in terms of touchdowns. But if you're combining the total asset and you look at the numbers, if you feel like Derrick Henry will not continue to run at the pace that he's running, then by all means, move into Achane. But there's no reason to think that he'll stop.
Yeah, Marlon, my bigger problem with Miami in general is they feel like they're about to quit. And that coach is going to get fired, and does all of it implode when that happens, and you could theoretically be in your league championship that day. It's not about the moment now. I just believe Henry with Baltimore playing either for the division or for home field has a lot to go with, and there's no stability issues. I think Henry is just a much safer play, and that's why I lean on Henry over the Dolphins.
Yeah, and Achane is perfectly viable as a boom flex. Don't get me wrong on that. So I'm okay with either of those trades, but if you prefer keeping Neighbors on your team and you don't want to go after George Pickens and you like the volume Neighbors is getting, I think that going after the Neighbors Achane side is
and either way, Marlon, you did it completely right. You're getting rid of your bench to go for all-in championship spike, which is still the right play.
Yeah, the playoffs do look super juicy. They really do. Who is the best to put in for Malik? Tillman, Mooney, Downs, or Waddle? It's Tillman this week, Landon.
Yeah.
Tillman, there is a very reasonable assumption to make that Tillman will score 14 plus points this week.
Mm-hmm.
The volume should be there. There should be a decent amount of targets thrown his way. Downs is
You're basically
untrustworthy.
looking at 7 and 70. Is that what you're saying, Bob, with the possibility of a touchdown?
Something like that. Downs is not on my radar. Mooney with the injury has fallen off the radar.
Yeah.
And Waddle is fluctuating there. The only guy that I think you could trust out of this grouping right now because of the injury to Mooney would be Tillman.
Yeah, I think the ranking would go Tillman with Link Waddle.
Yeah. When I get Jennings in my team, who would you flex between QJ and Jennings?
Jennings.
Both have good matchups this week for their position. I would tend to lean Jennings, but I would maybe try to find a way, if I could, to start both of those guys this week.
Well, the way you do that is a good old 2-for-1 trade, baby.
Oh, I just realized my sock is on backwards.
Dude, it's pretty late in the day for that
with
discovery.
A backwards sock. Oh my god.
Bro, you teach minds. How are you having this kind of problem?
Sam, Devonta Smith or Khalil Shakir? I understand this question has to be answered today. Khalil Shakir is projected to get a buttload of volume.
That's a technical term, right?
Butker is now doubtful. This is terrible. I need a new kicker. Screw kickers, guys. So Shakir has been disappointing us on a week-to-week basis when when the projections have put him in a good place. So I don't feel like I can trust Khalil Shakir at this point, but the metrics are backing up that it is Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, the metrics say that. I gotta tell you, all week I have been just feeling Devontae Smith in this matchup. I think we're gonna have a shootout. I think they're both going off. Both him and AJ are going off. I think we're gonna have some points tonight. It's gonna be fun. This is the kind of game where Devontae Smith gets 5 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Because unlike the Saints, when the Philly can get someone deep over the top, they keep doing it. And I think that's what we're going to get out of tonight. I think there's going to be a lot of points. This is one of these games to bet on touchdown scores because there's going to be a lot of touchdowns being scored.
Brendan, to answer this question really quickly, it's JSN for all the reasons that Joe brought up and the reasons that you know about Josh Downs. Yeah. Dylan, start 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 1 tight end, 1 flex, full PPR. And if you're in the chat, we will answer all the questions. We are moving down the list at a pretty decent pace today. 1 quarterback, 2
let's give us a deep dive.
1 tight end, 1 flex, full PPR. I think regardless, Herbie has an incredible matchup, boys. Incredible matchup this week.
Can't fight it.
Jaden Daniels is Jaden Daniels. Okay, so
that's true.
There could be I'm not discounting the fact that Herbie could scamper in for a touchdown this week. Could happen. But Daniels is the smart play. He is the must play, most people would say. There's reason to believe that you could start Herbie over him. I wouldn't. Running backs, Dobbins, Jacobs, Walker. I would lean Jacobs.
He also has, unless I'm reading this, he wrote this kind of hard to read.
I would check on the injury. Okay. I would check on the injury to Jacobs, but he would be a start for me. Dobbins would also be a start for me as well, since he is not really good at defense.
No, they're not.
San Francisco is probably going to clamp down on Ken Walker for sure. So it goes Daniels, Dobbins, Jacobs. Then in terms of the tight end, I'm on Hunter Henry if he's healthy. Then we're flexing a leftover running back, it seems.
Or McLaurin. He also has Scary Terry.
Or McLaurin.
Or Dell.
Or Dell. Who's the other guy? Nook. I think where I'm at on this whole discussion is that I'm definitely throwing in McLaurin tonight. If Daniels has a good game, you're going to benefit from that. If not, it could kind of do you dirty. And Dell is worth starting as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's interesting. It's interesting. You got your wide receiver situation figured out. You could decide not to start McLaurin and just start Dell and cut your losses just in case Daniels doesn't have a good game. You could do that.
No, go for the stack. Go all in, my man.
Philly,
go all in.
I will say this, though, Dylan. Philly has a really good pass defense. They let up one of the least amount of points in terms of passing to opponents. So when you look at it, that is something to really think about as well. I would be a little bit concerned about that. So if you are concerned about that, like I am, Dell is a reasonable choice to make. Would you drop Winston for AR5? Absolutely not, Quincy. Both of those players offer you the same upside in a week. You saw Winston's upside, okay? You saw it in the game that he played where he had all the time in the world to throw the ball. You saw his upside that week. I think we saw AR's upside, couple of weeks back, like first game of the season, right? Where he's scampering around
upside ever
to run the ball. Yeah, I mean, we've seen, week one, while the volume sucked, week one, he was doing some scampering around, doing his AR things, and people were really, excited. He finished week one, number 4 overall in terms of quarterbacks because he rushed for a touchdown and got 56 yards and passed for 2 touchdowns. Since then, he's been absolute hot garbage. So
he needs 2 months to prepare for a game to be good.
And he's had that. So maybe
only in week 1.
Maybe he has it. Austin just traded MHJ and Waddle for Pickens. Thoughts? While people are going to probably lambaste you on this trade, I like the move.
Yeah,
I really do. I mean, I think what you're doing is you move,
especially since you said in there you never start them and you have no faith.
You never start them, and you're going to start Pickens, and you're going to start Pickens this week. The matchup is great.
You're going to start them.
You're going to start Pickens this week. It's a great matchup. I'm hanging by a thread in 6, so I'm barely in the playoffs. Yeah, I don't know, man. If you feel, and I would say this is definitely just a gut feeling on your end, if you feel, and Russell Wilson this week I think is a good start. I've said it. I think he's a good start over Jordan Love as well. So knowing that, if you feel like Chuba gives you a good chance to win this week and you need a win this week and you feel like Debo will give you a good chance to win this week, because right now you're playing week by week. You're playing week by week.
Sure
Lamar always has a chance to throw up 30 points. So you're going to be mad at yourself if you lose out on those Lamar 30 points. But if you gain those back through Chuba and Debo, you're going to be okay. And you're definitely not going to get below 10 points with Russell Wilson. So that is something to consider as well. Austin, I want to start Pickens over Amon-Ra this week. I just see Pickens having a huge game. And on top of that, I see the Lions just running a lot, especially since they should blow out the Jags. We thought Minnesota was going to blow them out too. You can't bench Amon-Ra. You can't bench Amon-Ra, but Pickens is a player that you
can't bench Neighbors, though. And that's the one. Going from your group before, I believe your 4 were Pickens, Neighbors, Amon, and Tillman. Neighbors is the one I would bench out of your group. Oh, Austin did give us the DD. Coming up. All right, appreciate it. And all the team players here who have yet become team players, you do that obviously by clicking subscribe. But the other part is start your questions up with a DD or QH. QH means we're just going to answer it quickly as it comes along.
Me,
and the deep dive's going to be a much deeper answer.
I need to go into the kicker waters again. Likely to miss 3 to 4 weeks. Headed to injury reserve with a left knee injury. I'm going to tell you this, gentlemen. My team has had the worst string of injuries, I think, that I've seen. Outside of, I would rather a player be out the whole season than try to piecemeal a team together from all these things.
Oh yeah.
I've had Jordan Love get hurt, AJ Brown get hurt, Jaden Reed suffer because Jordan Love got hurt. Then he got hurt. Mike Evans got hurt. Cooper Kupp got hurt. Ken Walker got hurt. Tank Bigsby got hurt. And then my kicker gets hurt. On paper, it's an incredible team. I just can't get it there.
I had a roster very
Still in the
similar.
playoff
It started with Rishi going down. I just started selling the assets.
Still in the playoff hunt. Zach Ertz or Jake Ferguson. I know that neither of these are sexy options.
I'm Ertz by a mile.
Yeah.
Higher scoring game, more competent offense. Ertz is still basically the number 2. It's a very undefined who the number 2 is, but he's pretty much it.
I know Brown's probably the number 2. Actually, Jaden Daniels is probably the number 2, to be honest with you. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. But when you look at what's going on here, the matchup isn't good for Ertz. It's not good for Ertz. So, Dylan, if you have the opportunity and you have the waiver wire open and you have Dawson Knox or you have Hunter Henry, I would rather play both of those guys this week. I'd rather play Jonnu Smith this week than Zach Ertz as well.
That's fair enough.
So if any of those guys are available to you, I'd rather start any of those.
None of them are world beaters. Let's just start with that.
Jameson Williams, Estime, or Spears this week. Steve,
dude,
the whole fantasy community is roster baiting to Audric Estime over the past week. I will say this. He looks good.
I don't think it's worth it.
He looks good. But one of the things to caution on is that in order for the running backs over there in Denver to have a super successful fantasy week is that they need to score. And one of the things that's standing in their way, very literally standing in their way, is and that might be Javonte Williams and not Jameson Williams. But Steve, regardless, one of the things that's standing
either way, you're not picking them.
It is Javonte. One of the things standing in their way is Bo Nix, realistically speaking, right? And when we look at the game where Javonte Williams became the darling of the week, which was week 7 against New Orleans, he rushed for 2 touchdowns. Every single other week, he's fallen outside the top 15 players, and usually he's outside the top 24 players. He's had 2 weeks in the top 20. That's it. So while Audric Estime may be a better running back, and realistically probably is at this point with Javonte's injury from previously, it is very hard to believe, even if Atlanta doesn't have a great rush defense, it's really hard to believe that they're going to do any better than they've done all year. Right? So I can't reasonably say that I'm going to trot out these running backs, because the other thing too is that Javonte Williams looks, he gets some targets, right? And in the games where he did well, he got some targets. I think I'm very heavily on. I don't like any of these options.
Yeah, let's start with that. But you have to pick one of the Denver ones. Because you can't be going up against Minnesota's defense.
Yeah, if I were to lean, it would be Estime. But the floor is also very, very low. You're looking at probably a floor of 4 points and a ceiling of maybe 12.
Steve, this feeling you have about being sad about this question is why we push for 2-for-1 trades all the time. Because your life is so much better if you upgrade 2 other positions and then just only one of these guys are your flex. You put Javonte Williams and a running and a receiver, and you upgrade that slightly. Same thing with your other receiver, and then next thing you know, I don't have to make choices like this. That's
Chivalry, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Should I trade Najee and Chubb for Kyron? If you could do that, do that. That'd be insane.
Yeah, totally. You'll 100% do that.
That shouldn't even be allowed.
No,
but if that
2 adults accept it, you let it happen.
If that can happen, and I could end up with Josh Jacobs and Kyron and Cooper Kupp, I'm solid, man. Like, I get you wanting to keep Chubb, But what I also want to say is that, and Joe said it very well a couple weeks back, when a team is not fighting or, not doing well, logistically speaking, Chubb is one of our favorite running backs over the last couple of years, guys.
Oh, no
So
doubt.
this is not anything against Nick Chubb, even though we
Him
live
and King
in
Henry,
Pittsburgh,
the best two running
right?
backs of our adult lives.
But I disagree. CMC, man. But CMC and LaDainian.
CMC's not a pure runner, though.
Man. Sean Alexander, though, man. Sean Alexander was a
Don't you go Sean Alexander on me right now.
I love Sean Alexander, man.
Sorry for starting this, guys. I'm sorry.
And I also love LaShawn McCoy, pit guy, but LaShawn McCoy was a great runner. I mean, he looked amazing. And Chris Johnson.
You're going way too far back on this little time machine I was going on. I didn't think you'd click the super rewind button.
But, yeah, do that. It's not even a question. Go smack that trade now.
Yeah, I mean, Chivalry, the only issue you're going to have is you're going to have to come up with a flex, but that won't be the end of the world. The upgrade you get will be well worth it. Quincy, this one's a no-brainer. You cannot pick an Indianapolis receiver unless they're Pierce. He's the only Indy receiver you can take. You have to take Jennings by default.
Yeah. Austin, my problem is I have Taylor at my flex, so I really have to choose between Tillman and Pickens. I'd say if you're going to be happy because you had a feeling on Pickens and we're giving you that information that Pickens is probably going to have a good game, then go Pickens, right? Because you're going to be more upset with yourself that you benched Pickens if he goes off. Even if Tillman goes off, if Tillman gets 15 points and Pickens gets 18 points, you're still going to be mad. So it's Pickens. You got to.
What's really going to get mad at it is if Ahmad gets 15 and Tillman gets 20.
That too. Amon-Ra, when you look at your team, it's not unreasonable. Like, it really isn't unreasonable, Joe, to bench Amon-Ra.
You can never convince me to bench Amon-Ra. The reason being I think that they're going to score too many points. That does not compute. Because Amon, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
They made it very clear last week that Amon needs to get the ball for that offense to be consistent. Yeah, that was why they came back in that game, and they ain't going to forget it just because they're going to play Jacksonville. Or correction, Jacksonville's coming to play them. Dude, I don't think Goddard's worth the pickup for anyone. I don't think Goddard's going to give you anything, Quincy. What I think he's ultimately going to give you is the what ifs, and the only time he's worth playing is if A.J. Brown and Smith are both hurt, and I don't like rooting for injuries, so I want to do that.
Yeah. Quincy, maybe I'd drop somebody else for Goddard. Maybe if you're holding somebody else that's not worth holding, maybe.
I don't want Goddard.
But
I don't like Goddard either, by the way.
Disley's getting okay production when he's healthy. PPR flex play this week: Estime, Dobbs, or Pittman. Frankie.
Dobbs, no doubt.
For everything that we said, Estime's floor is approximately 4 points because that's 40-ish yards. His ceiling is 12-ish points. That's if he gets a touchdown and 60 yards, okay? Maybe a reception here or there. Dobbs, also, when you think about Romeo Dobbs, his floor is lowish. His ceiling is pretty much the same. So I think you're comparing floors here. The matchup is okay. The Bears haven't played a good quarterback in a long time. But what you're looking at here, especially in PPR leagues, is that he's going to get at least 3 receptions, at least. And coupling that with it, he's going to get at least 20 yards, probably more. So his floor is a bit higher than Estime's, but also there's a little bit more concern depending on how they distribute the ball. I'm still on Dobbs because I'm not yet sold on Estime, but it very well could be that Estime has a great game.
Hey, definitely team players, let's make sure we start putting the quick hits and deep dives in there. It's an important part of how we know how to treat you correctly.
Would you still make the Kyron deal if Amari Cooper becomes my flex? Let me just say this. Chubb and Amari Cooper are basically the same flex play. Chubb can have a great game this week. The matchup is pretty decent for Chubb this week. But again, Amari Cooper, if he comes back and plays this week, would be good too. At least not great, but at least in the same framework as Chubb. Okay. That's just that is just what needs to be said about that. And on a weekly basis, you're not gonna like be super upset at that, I don't think. But again, Amari has to play. If you need to wait a week to make that happen, maybe you wait it out another week. But I don't think you can. I think Kyron's a great play.
So, Frankie, going back to your list, adding Pierce to estimate Dobbs and Pittman, I'm still staying with Dobbs.
I like Dobbs, but Pierce is the ultimate home run. I'm going to say that again for those.
Yeah, but he's ultimately a 0.
But what I'm communicating is basically the same thing. Is all of those players' floor is lowest.
No, I get it. You know, like sometimes fireworks can get lit underwater, but normally they don't.
Pierce's floor.
That's basically what he is.
Pierce's floor. Well, Pittman's is the lowest. Pierce's floor is the lowest, but Pierce's ceiling is the highest because we have shown that in every single game, Joe, that he has played with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, but it's like picking Shaheed. You're getting a very low volume with a huge upside.
It is.
I don't like playing those games.
I get that.
I never have. And it feels like the Colts always have a guy that's that. And you used to love them, the all or nothing guys that they would have. And it feels like that's just part of the Colts way. I don't know.
I just want to communicate, right?
I don't like playing that type.
When we go from week 3 to week 9, just for Antonio Pierce here, there were 3 weeks that he got 1 ball, which I communicated yesterday. He could easily go for 1 for 7. And there's 1 week where he caught 0. So he is the ultimate home run threat. He's either a 0 or below 10 or beyond 15. So if you're comfortable with that, go for it.
So need to drop one, Diego. This is a pure cut. Leggett, Deontay Johnson, or Estime? Bob, for me, this is easy. I'm going DJ's the one who gets cut. I don't see a pathway he can do anything successful. I can write a book where Estime becomes the dude. I can write a book where Leggett becomes a dude. I cannot write a story that has any credibility that has Deontay Johnson becoming a dude.
Yeah. I think I'd drop Deontay, Diego, but I'm curious why you're dropping them. Are you
do a 2-for-1 trade. You're probably better off.
Are you bringing back Mike Evans from the IR, or are you dropping him for a kicker? If you're dropping him for a kicker, wait until Saturday or Sunday to do that, because then if your league works like mine, he'll be dropped to the waivers and people can't pick him up for Sunday. That's
another way to go around it. Although I don't really feel like I need to protect Deontay Johnson.
One, I got offered Brian Robinson, Addison, and Marvin Harrison Jr. for Ken Walker. Do I pull the trigger? One, we answered this question a little bit earlier. When I look at this, I think that I got offered Brian Robinson Jr., Addison, and Marvin Harrison Jr. for Ken Walker. Also got offered Debo and Waddle for Ken Walker. Still got Stevenson, Kyron, and Brees. Where I fall on this is I think that I take
the Debo part of this game.
Yeah. You don't really need Brian Robinson Jr. It's nice, but you don't need him. Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. We've talked about him a lot this episode, and we've talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot in the last 3 weeks. But
yeah, we have.
He does have lowish volume, but he does have a decently high ceiling on a week-to-week basis. If I were you, Stevenson's schedule could be good for running backs if Drake May can start to motivate them towards the red zone. Because what we know about Stevenson is outside of a good 30-yard run this year that ended up for a touchdown, he's not great. He really isn't a good running back. So if I could move Stevenson straight into Debo, I would do that.
You can never do that. you're going to have to put more than Stevenson in. You'll never be able to get that through.
Yeah, but I mean, if I could put in Stevenson and Madison, or Stevenson and a wide receiver or something to move into Debo, I'd do that. I just don't see a lot of value with Addison. I think it's a wasted piece there. And Marvin Harrison Jr. might not improve your situation, Juan, in the wide receiver market that you have. And Brian Robinson Jr. is just white noise.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make a trade that's going to be accepted. That wouldn't get accepted.
It wouldn't get. I don't think it'd get accepted, but it's worth offering because Stevenson does score occasional touchdowns, even though he can't run.
Yeah.
It's worth considering.
New England's in so much trouble.
Would you rather have Mason or Rico on the bench?
Mason, no doubt. No doubt. I'd rather have Mason on my bench because you're one CMC slip up from having 40 points again. Rico has no upside of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Joe's absolutely right. Right now, Mason is one of the better holds in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Rico Dowdle, if things cut his way, could return good value. I mean, from week 4 to week 9, he put up really respectable-ish numbers, finishing 2 times in the top 10. But the pathway to do that now has become a little bit harder. So I'm not going to say that he is. I think right now, Rico Dowdle, if you were to want a back-end flex play, Rico Dowdle slips into the back-end flex and Mason doesn't. But if you're just looking for a hold, then it'd be Mason. James, Taysom Hill, Goddard, or Hunter Henry this week? I'm on Hunter Henry this week if he plays.
If not, the order is Henry, Hill, Goddard, because you can't use Goddard anyway. If you're not on him tonight, can't use him. I'd rather roll the dice on Hunter Henry.
John, before we get, we'll get to John here, and then we'll get to the last 2 deep dives here. And if anybody has any more questions, we can answer them. I am going to go get a drink of water here after we answer this quick hit here. Should I trade Kamara for Swift or Chase Brown? My record is 5-5. No, John. When looking at your team earlier, and Joe, can you go back in the chat and look for his team? When we communicate about your team, John, that we put it, I put it in the 5-point category there. Moving Kamara laterally into one player doesn't help you. Okay?
No, it doesn't.
And it looks like you're only starting one running back unless that Hill is Justice Hill, or Taysom Hill. So I'm not seeing your other running backs here unless it's just Kamara.
Yeah, it looks like that.
So I'm not, if it's just a start one running back league and it's, the 2 QBs are making up the point differential there, what I would be more so inclined to do would be to move Kamara for a quarterback and a running back, right? So,
nah, dude, there's too many voids to do that. Oh, what I would do here, John, is not to go
the rest of your team there. So that
you need to get return here. So I would do something like Adams and Taysom Hill to go try to get, maybe you're doing a 3-for-2 trade here, where you're giving up Adams, Taysom Hill, and May, and trying to get back. Listen, you need to change in virtually every position, because, like I said, it's such a rough starting point. Adams, Kamara are your 2 best pieces to move. You need to get volume in return for them. So you're doing a 1-for-1 lateral, especially in a 1-for-1 move that would probably be a downgrade, is not going to be the direction that we're going to recommend there.
Mm-hmm.
Austin, your deep dive here was first, so you get to be up here. Team being Hurts, Hopkins, Williams, JMO, Myers, Nico, Lamb,
John.
Jennings, BTJ, White, Sonic, and Knuckles. Love it. Hunt, Kraft, Pitts, Aubrey. Rate this team. All right, so this is pretty night and day from John's. John, I'm not picking on you here, just the reality. There's a lot of players on here that can be amazing lighted up tight. You're looking at Miko, Collins, Lamb, and Jennings as your playoff push running backs. You got Detroit's backfield. You're in a really good spot here. What I would do is probably want to get the other running back that's better than White. Now, you said earlier, Austin, you love White, so I'll respect that. But that would be my first gut look at your team. The other part is you have 4 receivers you're never going to play that have trade value. So what you could look to do is upgrade Kraft. Go to the owner who has Kittle or Kelsey, and do Kraft and one of your receivers, BTJ maybe, and upgrade it. Do a 2-for-1 in that department because you don't have any glaring holes, but you do have excess assets that you're never going to use. You don't need to, like I said, you don't need to have that many extra receivers. You have 4 receivers that can contribute that aren't there. And BTJ and D-Hop would be the 2 I'd want to upgrade a pretty good Kraft into an elite tight end.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, Austin. Where you look, your team is solid all around. You've got a lot of solid pieces. Myers with Minshew is going to be good. If he doesn't have Minshew, it is what it is. Jameson Williams is a piece just like Alec Pierce, just like Rashid Shaheed. The volume in the first couple of weeks was good. Now it's not. So when I look at your team, you're in a really solid place. And what I would think about doing, just like Joe said, is getting yourself into Travis Kelce or George Kittle, preferably Travis Kelce. And the way to do that is BTJ, Kraft, and maybe something else. Especially if the person doesn't believe that Trevor Lawrence will be back, BTJ is a solid play. You also could think about if you feel that Lamb doesn't have a place on your team. He's a piece.
Then move Lamb. I mean, he's got name
He's
right.
a piece that added with Pitts might be able to move you into Kittle or Kelsey.
Yeah, you need to keep one of the 2 tight ends between Kraft or Pitts because Kittle and Kelsey both have injury risk, but you don't need them both.
Yeah, so if I were you, I'd be moving one of those wide receivers that we mentioned, Lamb or BTJ, plus either Kraft or Pitts to move yourself into a really top, really unquestioned top end tight end. While I think Kraft is getting there, and while I think Pitts could get there, Kelsey is already there.
Kelsey. That's the 2 you want.
All
right, Bob, we're going to do the other deep dives. Just end with the quick hits.
Let's get to Marty's deep dive, and then we'll clear up the quick hits, and we're trying to be done here by 5:35, 5:30-ish. All right. Go ahead, Joe.
I have Wilson, DK, Higgins, Waddle, Shakira, and JT, Brees, Kyrie. You got stacked backfield, my dude. And Jacobs. I got Ott and McBride as my tight ends in a 1-flex league. I want to improve somewhere. Where do we do it at? You need to improve your receiver room for sure. You have too many stacked running backs given that's only a 1-flex league. So the one I'm looking to move here is Brees because I think he gives you the most return. I want to pair Brees and Higgins and swing for the fence at the receiver market. I want to try them all. That's what I want to do. I want to do Brees and Higgins for a ma and see if you can get it through.
All right, let me take a look at it. I have Wilson DKT. It's 1-flex league. Want to improve somewhere. Any suggestions? So I like that you're sitting here with JT, Brees, Kyron, and Jacobs. But like I said, you really don't need them all. Trade Brees. The schedule's great. Trade Brees or Jacobs, and maybe one of your tight ends, and move yourself into a really good situation at wide receiver that's unquestionable. Similarly, you could also move JT because there are some question marks about what Anthony Richardson and JT coexistence will look like. JT is producing right now. Brees is not. So JT could provide you with better value. Say you want to move JT and Otten because McBride is getting very good volume. And when Mike Evans come back, maybe Otten doesn't get the same. Maybe use JT and Otten to move into Chase or Jefferson. You could probably do that. You could add in a couple of back-end pieces if you want, but I think it's reasonable to think that that could be done because you definitely don't need JT, Brees, Kyron, and Jacobs, but I would monitor the Jacobs injury for sure. Absolutely. Your team's in a good spot. It's
and future team players out there, we are at 298. We are 2 away from hitting that fun 900 mark of subscribers.
We are at 898, Joe. 898.
890. You know how to read. I don't.
Numbers are important. But Marty,
that's why you're the teacher.
Marty, one of the things that's important to know is that carrying both McBride and Otten, both of those players, while we don't like flexing tight ends on a weekly basis, their production this year has been flex worthy, both of them. But you're never flexing them over JT, Brees, and Kyron. And the fact that you're sitting here in most likely a two wide receiver, maybe 3 wide receiver league, you need to get something better. Like, you're probably struggling because T and DK haven't played, so you're starting Waddle and Shakir, which has not been turning out well for you. So I would definitely look to upgrade and cement myself into a
I think you can do Brees and Higgins for a Ma. I think you'll be able to get that through.
Solid option. Even if you want to start looking at Malik Neighbors, you could do a low-end trade for Reed, a low-end trade for Pickens, and it's probably not going to cost you as much as you think it will. How about if I put in Josh Downs and Stevenson for Debo? I'd do that.
That's a respectable trade, Juan.
I'd do that. People are going to be down on Downs, though, so just be wary of that. People are going to think you're moving out of him because you're concerned, and likely so. I think it's a reasonable trade to make. Would you all trade Ramondre Stevenson for Drake London? I'd move into Drake London. Juan, you both own Stevenson. He's looking to trade him into Drake London. I don't think
I'd rather have Debo.
Trade him. I don't think people would trade him into Drake London, but if the option on the table was move Ramondre for Drake, if I had the running back backfield and Ramondre was like a flex play for me, yeah, I'd move into Drake. Chubb and Pacheco are on your bench. It's Tyreek and Taysom. Okay, John. I mean, you still got some room to work with there. Still got some room to work with. And knowing here, you have Ramondre. Your running backs are Etienne, Jacobs, Warren, Estimate, Pollard, and Eckler. It might be a little bit backwards to think that, Jacobs is your best running back there. Pollard's not worth a play this week. Eckler's situation is a little rough. Maybe for you, Chef, maybe I keep Ramondre. After Jacobs, it's a very uncertain backfield you have there.
I like Eckler, though.
I do like Eckler.
I'm not worried about Eckler this week.
Drake is worth getting, though, Chef. Drake is definitely worth getting. Binks, Jaden Reed or Devonta Smith this week. My lean would be on Devonta Smith, but I do think that Jaden Reed is capable of having a good game. I'm just not sure how the volume is going to turn out for both of these guys. If you're asking me rest of the season, I'm still on Jaden Reed rest of the season. I just got a Dobbins and Bucky for Jacobs trade-off. Nihil, I like it. You have 2 players that are getting good enough volume, and you're trading away a guy that's getting a lot of volume, but the script might not favor him in the long term. Amon-Ra and Tank Dell for Pickens and Nico. Joe, would you do this? Would you even do Amon-Ra and Higgins for the same trade?
Wait, if I'm getting rid of Higgins instead of Dell, I would totally do that. I would do Amat and Higgins for Pickens and Collins. I would do that. The first one, no. The second one, yes.
I would just be Larry Nahil. Nico still has the bye week coming up. So does Tank. So I don't really want to be carrying 2 wide receivers with a bye week this late if I'm struggling to make it into the playoffs.
But if you got the loss that you can give, like if you have enough wins, that I'd rather have that going into the playoffs. Yeah, I don't want Higgins anywhere near a playoff roster.
Yeah, I do like Pickens though. Quick hit, KJ, welcome. What's up, guys? What's the chances Taysom Hill will go nuclear this week?
0.
I would say less than 10%. That's generous. You just saw that he didn't need to be used for them to be relevant in a game. They still have other options at tight end. I just don't see.
And the bottom line is that coach can't risk losing a game because of doing something cute with Taysom Hill. And Taysom Hill's value goes away with that fact.
Trone, Juan, and then Bot. Bot is our last question. Bot is last question. I'm typing that in the chat right now.
You don't need to rate it 3 times, Bob. All right, so you rebounded with a 3-game winning streak.
I got to answer Rumpel. Rumpel, I got to answer you too. You just got in there just in the nick of time. I typed it in at the right time.
We got. What are we looking to do here, Tyrone? I love that you bounced the team back. I like where your roster is at. So the Mooney injury could give you a little bit of fear. I think what we need to do moving forward is we need to get some of that extra depth you have on your bench and upgrade it. A potential option for doing that, you might be able to do Monty and JSN again to Gibbs, do an internal trade there with the Detroit running backs. But other than that, you're not in bad shape. It's hard to fight Tyreek, Kupp, and Barkley as your main dudes going forward. So
I'd say your starting lineup is definitely a solid 8 to 8.5.
That's a playoff team.
Tyreek is the only guy there that worries me, but you got to start him. I mean, in your lineup, we answered your question yesterday, Trone, and I if Mooney hadn't been hurt, D-Hop and McLaurin are definitely starting for me in Kupp. So that leaves Tyreek as the odd man out. But Joe told you yesterday about the many reasons why Tyreek is a reasonable play on a week-to-week basis. It's just a frustrating play on a week-to-week basis. It's really hard to bench a guy that has an upwards potential of 30 points, but his wrist injury is legit.
Your life might be better moving out of Tyreek then. I mean, that's also a choice too. Just move out of Tyreek. I mean,
with what you have, I think that clearing up some of that back end guys, because realistically, Mostert, Madison, Barkley, Monty, Barkley and Monty aren't coming out of your lineup unless they get hurt. Realistically, right? So
do Tyreek and Madison and go into you might even be able to get to a Ma doing that, depending upon how the Ma guy feels.
You have some room to play around. I think for this week you're okay though, Trone. Unless your trade deadline is this week, I think you're solid. And I think Joe's right. I think that guys you want to be targeting would give you that definite upgrade. But I don't see a guy out there right now that outside of Amon-Ra, outside of Jamar, that gives you a definitive upgrade over any of the guys that you're starting right now. That's the key, Trone, is no player right now gives you a definitive upgrade over any other guy you're currently starting. No, don't put in Jacoby. We like Jacoby a little bit more, especially with Gardner Minshew. Again, both have fluctuating quarterback situations, but it seems like Anthony Richardson is going to be there in the long term. So I'm moving downs. Should I do ETN, Tank, Bigsby? I assume that's Tank Bigsby there. And Higgins for MHJ.
I would do that.
Running back room is Chubb, Hall, Estimate, ETN, and Tank. My wide receivers are Lamb, Higgins, DK, Hopkins, Judy, and tight end is Ferguson.
The trade under its own merit is worth it.
Yeah.
Assuming that's Tank Bigsby, the trade under that own merit is worth it.
It leaves you a little bit thin,
which it is.
And I'm okay with that right now. You get a way better tight end. That's the key here is that ETN and Tank are hard starts on a week-to-week basis.
You're also getting rid of Higgins.
Yeah, Higgins is a not start. So, Quincy, we'll get to that deep dive another time. I'll write you in a message in the chat, Quincy, to answer.
All right, so Rumpel, I had a chance to go through this, reading this one before it came up. I like the first 3 legs of it. I like the Eagles and the 3.5. I like Barkley. I like Brown. I don't like the Devontae reception number. Devontae's reception number has always scared me watching the Eagles. What I would rather do with Devontae is plus 65 yards. I think you'll get a better odds and a better experience watching him play. That's how I would do that with Rumpel. All right, guys. Team players, thank you for being with us. Thank you all who have been subscribing, being with us, the quick hits, the whole 9 yards. Thank you.
We appreciate it. We appreciate the time. Good luck this week. Thanks, Jesse.